What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the Beyond Ordinary podcast, where we connect with great people doing great things to inspire you to do the same. Got another banger episode for you guys today. We're going to be talking about voice acting, brands, how they could use voice in their marketing. And I brought on Jodi. How you doing today?
I'm doing really well, Myles. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you so much for coming on the podcast.
My pleasure.
You mind telling the people what you do?
I am a voice actor. I've been doing that for 17 years now.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I started in 2007, so the landscape was a lot different than it is now.
I bet.
Yeah. But I work mostly in commercial and advertising and, marketing and branding, that kind of thing. So commercials, corporate narration, promos for podcasts, and all the sorts of things that happen with that. And I love the advertising landscape. I just am fascinated by the whole psychological thing of it.
Okay. And then you said you started in 2007. Like, what got you into the space?
I've been a singer all my life. So I was raised in a musical family, and using my voice was always something that I wanted to do. When I was 11, I would call into DJs, late night talk shows, and express my opinion, because at 11 I had an opinion. Yeah, well, trying to record yourself on a boombox.
That's funny.
Yeah, so it was really, really interesting. But I volunteered my time at the CNIB, which is the Canadian National Institute for the Blind, back in 95, 96. And we were reading magazine articles onto reel-to-reel tape at the time. And this was before I knew voice acting was really a thing. I knew about radio DJs. I had no idea about voice acting. And so that was kind of where the bug bit. But I didn't end up doing anything with it because I was doing internet marketing and SEO. So I am an early adopter of both the computer and the internet. So I had my first computer in 86, and I was on the internet in 95.
Okay.
So, I guess that makes me kind of right and left brained. I just enjoyed it. I really enjoyed it. And when I got really bored with SEO, right around the time of 2007, when Google was it, there was nothing else other than Google that mattered.
Yeah.
I got really bored, and I decided it was time. And I had a lot to learn.
Okay. I did not expect you to say that you started off in internet marketing and SEO. Before we dive more into the voice acting part, kind of walk me through how that was being an early adopter of the internet and internet marketing, and how it's shifted since then?
Well, it shifted a lot, mostly because of AI at this point. When I was first doing it, it was kind of brand new. And the reason that I got into it was I had a songwriting resource called The Muse's Muse it started in 95 as basically a page, an HTML page where people would email me the answers to questions I was asking. And then I would post their responses on this one page. And this was when there were no message boards. There was no other way, really. I mean, email was it. And there wasn't really any other way to communicate online. So having this out in a public forum was kind of a new thing. And it got really huge over the years. I didn't stop doing it until 2016. So it got really big. It had a radio show. It had all sorts of articles and columns, like regular columnists. And it had a list of songwriting contests. And I interviewed people, and I had a radio show. And like the radio show I had was back in 2002 when real audio was still a thing. So I don't know if you remember real audio. It might be before your time.
What do you mean by real audio?
Real audio was the MP3 of the time. It was a type of audio file.
Gotcha.
And it didn't end up lasting. MP3s kind of took over.
Yeah.
Even though I don't think they had the same quality. They actually, I don't think, had as good quality. But, VHS and beta and all of that stuff, right? It's not always the best one that wins.
Exactly.
Yeah. So yeah, Real Audio was the early version of a smaller form of audio that you could share,
Okay.
let's say. So it was really interesting, and like I said, this is back in 2002, so it was not easy to do. And I mean, I know a lot more about making audio now than I ever did back then, but yeah, that was before even podcasts. I think podcasts became a thing in, I want to say, 2005.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
So yeah, but again, it was hard to do anything other than put it up on the internet and hope people listened. So,
Yeah.
but you know, long story short, which I just made ultra long, is,
No worries.
I was promoting my songwriting website on no money at all. I had nothing to put into it really, other than because it wasn't really making money. It was,
Hmm.
I mean, I had some advertisers. Berklee College of Music was an advertiser for a long
Oh,
time. Song U, which was a songwriting university kind of thing, was a sponsor for a really long time. And I would make a little bit. I would make enough to pay the hosting fees, but that was pretty much it. It was not what I would call an actual living.
right.
So making it into a living, what I had to do was learn a skill and then do
Surprise,
that
surprise.
skill. Yeah. Well, exactly. I mean, we all have to learn a skill, right? Learn a skill that someone wants and then provide it to them for money.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So, what I did back then was when I learned how to promote that songwriting website, I took that out on the road, so to speak, and I started doing that for other people. And that's how I got into internet marketing and SEO because, you know, buying media buys for people doing banner ads and SEO, search engine optimization and stuff. I mean, that was big back then. And it was for a really long time. And like I said, 2007 I got super bored with it because it was just same old, same old.
Yeah,
And when there's only one search engine that matters, it gets really boring.
I bet. Yeah, I could. SEO
Yeah.
definitely does not sound fun, like it's fun at all. So
Well,
I don't blame you.
it was fun while I was doing it because it was such a new thing and it was just as much an art as a science. So it wasn't all about figuring out the algorithm. It was also about moving things around and making sure your keywords were in certain places and making sure you had content. You know, content's always king, right?
Oh, yeah.
And all sorts of other little things that you could do. Nowadays, the reason that things have changed so much is because AI is kind of taking over because people are asking what they would have been asking a search engine, they're asking an AI instead. So the search engines aren't really getting as many of those searches as they used to. And it's only getting
Yeah.
worse because isn't it ChatGPT that just introduced their own search engine?
Yeah, they did. They
Yeah.
did. And yeah, that's gonna disrupt the space crazy. Like I'm not gonna
Oh,
lie,
yes, it is.
I definitely use ChatGPT significantly more than I use Google because
Yeah.
it's just a lot handier. It gives me a lot, like if I have follow-up questions, I could ask follow-up questions. It's really crazy. And to me, it's just crazy to see how you could be number one in a space for so long. And like you could see like, oh, nobody's gonna top Google. Google's been on top for decades, and here comes OpenAI, and now all of a sudden Google's sweating bullets, and they might
Well,
get taken
yeah.
down within the next, few years, 5 years
Yeah.
plus. So
Yeah. They're getting a lot of lawsuits sent their way too, which is not helping. um, I guess the bigger you are, the harder you fall, right?
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. But let's talk more about your voice acting career. What was your first gig that you did?
The first gig that I did was off of a directory. At the time, they have what are called pay to plays. So they're directories where you can pay a yearly fee to be on their directory, and then people send you auditions. And if you happen to win the audition, then you do the job and you get paid through the site. And the very first job that I did was actually the voice of a documentary that was based on World War II, actually.
Oh wow.
So, yeah, and it was super cool because I had just done a version of "I'll Be Seeing You," which is a song that was written for and in World War II, and I had a version of that, and they used that version of the song as their closing credits song,
Okay.
which was really cool.
Cool, cool.
So
So if somebody wanted to get into, like you said, you signed up for a directory
mhm.
and like you have to audition and stuff, like what are these companies looking for, especially because it's a voice? So like what's the difference between if I was to try an audition and somebody else if it's just the voice? You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, nowadays it's not all about the directories, because those directories, kind of like Google, are sort of going the way of the dodo bird.
Mm-hmm.
they're they're not as useless now as I think they will become in the next 5 years or so.
Mm-hmm.
They're still getting some jobs, and people are still signing up for them. But I think nowadays it's really best to work on your own, getting clients coming to your website. So really what you need is well, first of all, you need training.
Mm-hmm.
So nowadays what I suggest, rather than doing it the wrong way, the way I did,
Mm-hmm.
is to get yourself a coach. Look on a website, for instance, called VoiceOver Extra, voiceoverxtra.com.
Mm-hmm.
And that particular website has a whole bunch of resources. There's tons on the net right now that can help you figure out what kind of genres you want to work in, who the best coaches are, who's reputable, what demos are going to cost, because demos are kind of your calling card. It's sort of like having a business card for a voice actor.
Mm-hmm.
And it's important to have some kind of a demonstration of what you can do. And they're usually made up in the beginning. So, someone will write you a script and then they'll produce it as if it's a regular spot. And usually people are doing at least commercial and a narration demo, just so that they have those and can send out a selection of things that they can do, so that people can get an idea of what their voice sounds like doing things. So there's that. But really, coaching is number one. And if you look out there, that the reason I suggest that website, VoiceOver Extra, is because I know the guy that runs it, and he is an upstanding guy, and I know that he vets everyone and everything that goes through that website. So if someone is on that website, you are not going to be scammed. Because there are so many scams out there. There are so many people that play on people's dreams. I mean, yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
So going to a place where you know that people are vetted and that they will be able to help you if you reach out, or at least direct you to someone who can help you, then it's a good place to start. But coaching is really number one. A website is number two, probably. Actually, no, sorry. A demo is probably number two. And then the website. Because there's no point in having a website unless you have demonstrations of how you sound. Because that's what we do. It's all about the sound.
What is a common thing that you see that people need to work on that are trying to get into this field that could be developed through coaching?
I think most people don't understand that this is actually acting. Whether it's a commercial, a corporate narration, or a promo, it is acting in some form or another. Promo is more about the voice, but it depends on who's directing you. And so being able to be directed is something that a coach will help you figure out, because you know your voice, and they'll let you know what the words are that a director will use in order to get you to a place that they need you to be. There's a whole vocabulary that goes into this. So understanding what kind of emotional cues get you to where you need to be is really important. And a coach can help you get there. But they also can show you how to connect with what you're seeing on a page. So it's not just reading a script. Anyone can read a script. It's true. And it isn't just about the sound of your voice either. Anyone can have a pretty voice. What it is connecting with what you're reading so that it's a performance rather than a read. Making sure that you are actually talking to someone. Because generally, especially in commercials and corporate narration, when you're performing that script, you are answering a question. Someone on the other end is having a dialogue with you. So you're speaking to one person. And a lot of the problems that people run into when they're first starting this is that they don't understand that they're only talking to one person, and that there is a lot more acting to it than just imitating someone else's way of speaking, if that makes sense. So a lot of people, when they get into voiceovers, they think, oh, I must sound like the person on that commercial. Like, that's how I'm supposed to sound.
Yeah.
Right? But that's not really it. The person on that commercial, first of all, what really is the job is the audition. So you need to get people to pay attention to your audition in order to get the job. And then once you have the job and they've already decided they like you, then you need to be able to take direction so that whoever is on the other end directing you gets what they need out of you. But the getting what they need out of you when they're directing you is the easy part. It's getting in front of them and getting the job that's the tough part.
Oh, of course. Yeah, getting new clients is always hard. Getting new gigs is always hard.
Exactly. Yeah. So being able to be authentically you in a way that is speaking their copy is really what you want to be able to do. And let me tell you, even for the most talented voice actors, that can take years. It really can, because I think a lot of us start by imitating.
Yeah.
A lot of us start by thinking, this is how I should sound if I'm a voice actor. But that's not really what they hire us for. They hire us to be more us. Yeah. Right? So someone who hires me for a job is hiring me because they like the way I sound speaking their script. And the reason they like the way I sound when I'm speaking their script is because something in it sounded authentic to them. If it doesn't sound authentic, and believe me, everyone nowadays has BS-o-meters that are way up here, you know,
yeah.
Right? No one wants to be sold to.
Yeah. I was just talking to one of my interviews that I had like a week ago. He was talking about how like it's you could see the genuineness like through screens now. Like,
yeah.
Like people are just so accustomed to knowing if people are genuine or not, and nobody wants an ingenuine person.
Yeah.
Anymore. So that makes sense. So in terms of audio branding, can you describe what that is a little more for me?
Well, audio branding is a huge umbrella, actually. So what it is the sound of a brand. And it can be a whole bunch of different things. So it can be the brand sound, like if it's a kettle or something, and it makes a particular, like a GE kettle, and it makes a specific sound because it's GE, right? Or the jingle or the audio logo, the sonic logo that plays on their ads, or the sounds that they use on their on hold if someone's calling their company for some reason, or the sounds that can play your CEO onto a stage if they're doing a public speaking gig. Like, there's a whole bunch of different things that this can involve. And, you know, it's a lot. But the thing is, it's something that a lot of people don't think about, because they always think about their logo, their visual logo, the colors, the design, the fonts they use on all of their materials. They very rarely think about how that sounds.
Why do you think it is?
Yeah, it's something people need in order to fully connect with the brand that you have.
Why is it, you said it's something that people need to fully connect with the brand? They need that audio. Okay. That's very interesting, because I really rarely think about the audio components of like brands. Probably like while you were talking about probably the first thing that came up to my mind was every time I turn on my MacBook, like that sound that it plays, like
that
when
sound.
it turns on.
Windows has one too. Yeah.
Yeah, everybody has a sound, but I never really thought about like why is that even important? You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
I like it because me personally, I'm not using these products because of a sound. You know what I mean? Like,
No, but you trust them more because of the sound.
okay,
So I'm not saying that that's what actually makes you buy the product. It gives you a deeper understanding of who that brand is, though.
gotcha. Okay,
And
brand
then you're
recognition.
more likely to part with your hard-earned dollars, right?
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. That makes sense. I like that. I like that. So we were talking about AI earlier,
Hmm.
and I'm sure that you get this question a lot about how AI has disrupted the space now that you can make
Sure.
thousands, millions of sounds using AI. So what are your thoughts about that?
Well, it's really fascinating because I have on the docket. I'm about to interview someone who terms himself a neuromarketer.
Mm-hmm.
So really fascinating stuff. We had a pre-chat. So when I have someone on my podcast, I always have a pre-chat with them. I have a little 30-minute or less discussion with them just to let them know what's going to happen in the podcast
Oh
and
wow.
talk with them about what we might discuss when we actually have the interview.
Mm-hmm.
And just to know where they want to go with it and so that they know how I usually work. And in our pre-chat, he actually, it's a fellow named Joe Sauer who is really fascinating. And he told me that he has actually been a part of experiments where they took AI voices or AI music, AI created stuff, and they let people listen to it, and then they let people listen to the human created stuff. And when people were asked, they couldn't tell the difference between the AI and the human created stuff.
Yeah, I bet.
Consciously, right? But neurologically, subconsciously, they did
What?
because they knew there wasn't a human connection with the AI.
Okay.
This is entirely subconscious and actually proven. So the really interesting thing is we can delude ourselves consciously, but we can't fool ourselves subconsciously.
Mm-hmm.
So are we getting the same connection from AI created things? No, we're not.
Mm-hmm.
And we may not realize it.
Okay. So I see what you're saying. You're saying that what we were just talking about earlier in terms of having that sound and having that connection with that brand. You can utilize AI, but you might not get that long term brand loyalty in the long run.
Exactly. But there's more to it than that, in that if you are, because AI is kind of a cheaper way to do things,
Mm-hmm.
if you're not using it specifically for something that a human couldn't do, like for instance, ever changing weather patterns, like if you're reporting on the weather and 50 different places need to have a weather report that's, changes on the minute, then yeah, you're going to use an AI voice. I totally get why you would, right?
Yeah.
Or if you have a huge telephone system and it's changing all the time and you don't want to bother hiring someone to go and read all those names and change them all the time. Yeah, I totally get why you would use AI voices. There are lots of reasons why you would. But if you're using that as your brand voice and you aren't a technology company, you are cheaping out on your audio brand.
Yeah.
And people can tell. So imagine what happens if they find out, oh, you didn't hire a human for that. How does that make your brand look? It's
Yeah.
kind of like like a major brand going to Fiverr. You know what I mean?
That's
Like
actually funny.
yeah, it just doesn't compute. It shouldn't be a thing.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not even saying that in some cases it may not work. Like in some cases it could work. If it actually fits your brand, go for it. But if you are touting human authenticity in your brand
Mm-hmm.
and you're using an AI, well, there's a dichotomy there. There's a difference.
Yeah.
There's a disconnect.
No, 100% understand that
Yeah.
that comparison of a big brand going to Fiverr. That's funny. Yeah, you wouldn't
None of them would
at
ever.
all. At all. They'd probably have an in-house. They'd bring a team in-house before they do that. So
Yes.
yeah, okay.
Yeah. So, yeah, there's a lot. There's a lot that goes into the discussion of AI. And, it's not all bad. I'm not afraid of it per se, and I think I could use it if I had control over my own AI voice.
Hmm.
And I happened to be sick and unable to update something for a client. I could have my AI voice update it for them, and they would pay less, which is totally fine, but they would still get what they need. Yeah, a few words here and there, or a sentence or something that they wouldn't have to pay me a session fee for. Yeah, sure, I could make that a service. I could help my clients,
Hmm.
I don't have a problem with that. And there's also something to be said with preserving your voice in the way that it is in this moment, because people are losing voices. They get older, they can't do this job anymore, or an illness takes over and they don't sound the same way.
Yeah.
There's lots of reasons that AI voices can be really useful. And all I'm concerned with is consent and having control over it myself.
Yeah, I've been hearing about how now with the rise of AI, there's like these scam callers that try and steal your voice and stuff like that. So whenever I get a call from somebody I don't know, I don't even say anything because I'm not trying to get caught up in all that.
Oh, yeah, you got to be really careful these days. And I mean, think about it. Our banking is tied into this.
Yeah, exactly. If they have
It's
enough
scary.
information, they could clone your voice, call your bank, and
Yep.
who knows, potentially drain your account. So I'm
Yep.
not I'm not trying to have that be me at all. So you mentioned that you're a podcast, and I want to dive more into that. What is your show called, and what do you talk about over there?
Sure. Well, it's audio branding. I thought I would be pretty spot on with the name.
Hmm.
It's really about the power of sound, though, and how it influences us. And by that, I mean both our buying decision and our daily lives. So, right now, the newest podcast is actually about music therapy. So, how can we give ourselves better mental health with music? How
Hmm.
can we heal ourselves? And I've talked about the beeps in hospitals and how they're hurting us, and, talked with some various experts in that case. I've talked with casting directors and public speakers and musicians about how they can actually make money as a musician, because that's really tough these days.
Yeah.
I've talked with podcasters, lots of people from the beginning days of podcasting and people who are doing innovative things with new organizations. And I talk with specifically also audio branding companies. So, specifically, people who all they do all day, every day, is help brands come up with a sound that encapsulates who they are
Hmm.
and who they want to attract. So it's kind of a mix of both. When a company works with a client, they want to make sure that they know who that client wants to attract and what emotion they want them to feel. And then also, who are they? Who is the brand, and what do they want other people to feel when they're experiencing their brand?
Hmm.
So it's kind of a mixture, like the Venn diagram of in between of who are they and who do they want to attract
Hmm.
in sound.
Yeah, and sound.
Yeah.
Very key. I mean, kind of figured it's called audio branding. But okay.
Yeah.
So
And
what?
how it influences us too, because it
Mhm.
influences a lot of things. You can change what you taste with what you hear.
Really? I don't even think
Yeah.
about that. I always attributed like your taste buds and like your the way you smell.
Hmm.
Like if you couldn't smell at all, that it would affect the taste. But I wouldn't think
It
that
probably
hearing.
would, but
Yeah.
yeah, it can definitely be enhanced or changed based on what you're hearing as well. So the one of the people that I just interviewed not too long ago, his name is Pavle Marinkovic. He wrote a book I can't remember the name of the book offhand right now, but it's all about the food cycle. So from growing to eating to making food to disposal, and how sound can work in all of those aspects. So one of the things he did was he had an experiment where he had people experience and taste chocolate while they were listening to a particular piece of music. And he had them try 2 pieces of chocolate, gave them different types of music, and it was the same piece of chocolate, and they were experiencing the taste differently. So they were given a survey afterwards that asked them how bitter or how sweet the chocolate was. And depending on what they were listening, they were experiencing it as more bitter or more sweet.
That's very interesting.
Yeah.
I never thought that.
And they didn't understand that they weren't given completely different types of chocolate. Like they thought it was completely different chocolate, but it was the same chocolate. So people definitely experience different flavors, different flavor profiles with different audio stimulus. So, for instance, I think like piano, flute, upper register kind of music can give you a sweeter flavor, and the deeper stuff gives you more bitterness. So that's kind of, I think, what he was getting to.
I might have to test that out.
Yeah, it's really fascinating. I know that Propel back in 2016 did a promotion where they had people walk around to booths, listen to something in their headphones, and then dial in whether they wanted the drink to taste more salty or more sweet. On an iPad. I think they were just using an iPad to get people to decide which they wanted. And then they were listening in their headphones and experiencing the same drink, at that same time, completely differently based on what they were hearing. This was a promotion that they did through SiriusXM and Pandora back when Steve Keller was running that for them. And he's the sonic strategy director over at SiriusXM. And it was an absolutely fascinating experiment. And you know, if you think about it, the applications for this are huge. If you are, for instance, diabetic and you can't really have sweet, well, then if you listen to some types of music, you might get more of a sweet flavor profile from something and have less of a craving. You know, so there's all sorts of applications. Also, the restaurant business, huge applications.
Yeah, the music that they play like in the restaurant. Yep.
And if you think about it, the environment in a restaurant can change. You know, the way that people experience the food, or how much they drink, or whether they have more of a crunch in their flavor. Like for instance, in the food itself, there are, you know, like party restaurants, you know, that have the loud music and the pounding beats and stuff like that, right?
Yeah.
Like that tends to make people drink a little more, and it tends to make them eat a little more crunchy foods. Like they crave the crunch. And it also tends to have people not linger as much.
Okay.
So they tend to, you know, have their stuff and then go. Whereas the softer music tends to get people to linger a little longer and maybe not have as much drink because they're making it last a little longer, you know? So it depends on your environment, what you're hoping for. And yeah, there's all sorts of reasons that things change depending on sound.
Yeah, damn, I learned a whole lot about sound just now. But, which is what I want to ask you. What is something that you learned through your podcast about sound? Like was one or audio through a guest or a show or a discussion?
Oh my goodness, I've learned so much. So I mentioned Steve Keller. He was one of the first people that I had on my podcast who talked about the way that our other senses influence what we taste. That sound can influence what we taste, and all our senses work together and all of that kind of thing. So that kind of blew my mind when I first heard that from him. I know that also Pavle, when I was talking with him, he mentioned that there are certain sounds that break down biological matter. So when we're trying to get rid of waste, then, you can play certain sounds to help the waste break down quicker and with less toxic stuff, right? So it just depends on what's being used. Also, that plants grow much better with soothing music, and how much you should listen or play for the plants in order for them to grow better, and that they don't tend to like rock music.
Interesting.
That actually was really funny when I heard that, because they did an experiment, I think in India, based on roses. And with roses, it depends on the flower and the thorns. And more thorns and less flower tend to grow, the less happy the plant is. And that's what happened with rock music. Yeah. And they would also grow away from the speakers.
That's funny.
So it's just really fascinating stuff.
Absolutely. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
That is something I'll take note for my plants. Well, I mean, this is fake. I can never take care of plants. Like I
do not have a green thumb either. Yeah. I'm bad.
I think somebody moved out, and they were giving away plants. It was a small one. And I was like, free plant. It didn't last like 2 weeks, and I was like, all right, this is not for me. It's just not for me.
Yeah.
It's not for me.
I totally get it.
Yeah. But Jodi, it was great talking to you today. Thank you so much for coming on the show. But before we close out, is there anything that you want to leave the audience with?
Just that sound is important. And I think people should pay more attention to it. I think it just gets put in our background, and then we just sort of assume that it's always going to be there. And it can be a lovely thing, and it can be a detriment as well, because if we are not careful with, sound pollution, that can actually hurt us as well. So, be careful with the sound that you have around you. Okay. Curate it. Make sure that it's something that makes you happy. Okay. Yeah. Or that gives you joy, whether you want to be sad in the moment or not. Like it doesn't have to be all happy, but it should be something that you curate for yourself rather than let other people do for you. And just make sure you pay attention to it.
Absolutely. And where can the people find you at?
I am at voiceoversandvocals.com. That's my website. So if people need voiceovers, that's where you can find me. And the podcast is at audiobrandingpodcast.com.
For sure. I'll be sure to put all those in the show notes. Hopefully everybody learned something new about audio. I definitely did today. And until next time, peace.
Thanks so much.